needle, thread, pin. Hello, WM Siegel here. I want to talk about sewing and fixing your old clothes, um, and just trying not to throw out anything that's fabric. Um, I heard a statistic once. I can't be sure that it's true, but uh, it was that textiles were the number one item that gets thrown out, finds its way into the oceans. Um, I've worked on the ocean before, and I've seen the trash out there. There's a lot. It's upsetting, really. A lot of it's balloons from birthdays. You got to think about that stuff. But so it got me thinking. I'm really burning through T-shirts, going working labor's jobs, or things get filthy, big holes. Um, as a kid, I always stitched stuff. I was in Boy Scouts, and then later in life, I did a lot of backpacking and wilderness survival stuff. And you have to be able to fix your gear. Um, you know, I remember even in high school, like I had stitched something, fixed it or something, and I didn't do a great job, or somebody like making fun of me because I knew how to sew. Um, I promise you, Alexander the Great did not allow his soldiers to bring their mothers with them when he marched to India. Um, you gotta learn how to sew. Where you're, I don't know. But here's some stuff, you know, pants, right? You get holes in pants. Look how much fabric this is. To throw this out is that's a bummer. But then there's this middle ground of, well, I can't donate it because I don't want to give someone this, and they're not going to take it, right? Um, so there's this middle area of our clothing that I think needs to be addressed. Um, More on that in a minute, but had this pair of pants, totally blew out the crotch, and so I just did a really bad job stitching the back pocket of another pair of jeans there. And then that pair of jeans became my patchwork jeans. Those didn't really fit anymore, so um, of course there's always just my love of butterflies. So I sewed that on a t-shirt that I made. I make most of my own t-shirts. Um, and another thing here, this was fun. This t-shirt I wore for years, working out on the water. It's got holes, gotta fix that. But I like to make these things last. I had another flannel arms. I grew out of it, so I cut off the sleeves, and the middle parts still kind of fit. So I was like, oh, I could wear this as a layer to keep my chest warm. Um, and I took the sleeve off because I just loved the pattern. Because I just cut off these sleeves. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with this? You know, all this stuff. So I sewed it onto the outside sleeve of this t-shirt, which is kind of trippy. Um, so I sew socks too. This one's kind of this one's a little beat up. So uh, what might happen here is I have these other socks. I bought these crazy Danish hiking socks. God knows why. I wouldn't do it now because it would mean I wouldn't eat. But they don't fit. They shrank because I don't know what I'm doing with laundry. So I'm going to cut the heel off and put that in here. I'll do the same with the other one so I don't have a height difference. I've had that in life. I have a leg that's a teeny bit longer than the other one. It does hell on your back for sure. Um, so, I grew up reduce, reuse, recycle. Those are the three things they always said. And in the 90s, I was like a teen, playing in the woods, breaking stuff, um, a lot of tinkering, just having to put things back together, maybe fix it before my dad comes home. And that evolves into just trying to make my gear last longer. You know, I buy, I always have a fair amount of webbing around, like climbing webbing, tubular nylon webbing. It's great for belts. Make your own straps. I made this belt here. Well, I'll show you. Got some D-rings hanging around from some other project. Stitch that on. Put this over it just so it's there. And this is a belt that can hold your weight. So it's not just you have a belt, hold up your pants. But you also have a very strong piece of webbing. Use as a sling, all sorts of stuff. I think in those terms. I'm always on a camping trip. Even when I was wearing suits, living in the city, I just think that way. But the waist thing is what really got to me. In recent years, hearing that statistic it really stuck with me. And at the time I was working on the ocean, I was seeing a lot of trash in the ocean. Seeing a lot of people make trash in the ocean. It's just awful. It's awful. So another idea I had was, if you've got these articles of clothing that can't be cut up into patches, right? You got this pair of jeans that's just a mess and nobody can wear them. Cut squares and you have 120 denim patches if you need them ever, or if someone else does. Wash all this stuff before you process it or whatever. Zippers, take the zipper out. Take the buttons out. Do you know how many buttons people probably throw out? We're gonna have to start thinking of these things, because I feel like there's austerity in our future. Things are gonna get tight, So it's something I've been doing my whole life, but start fixing your clothes. No one cares what you look like. Believe me, no one's looking at you. There's 8 billion of us. There's too much to look at, So just fix your clothes and make them interesting. Somebody might ask about it, But the waist thing, so cutting up the jeans, having those patches, that's great. If you know anyone who is a seamstress or something, try to get them business. And then people will, when you hold on to clothes and they get fixed, it's like they have a whole new second life. It's amazing. It's great. Especially if it's done well, For the stuff that can't be donated, that you can't determine a way to do anything with this stuff. Pillow stuffing, make the whole thing one big project, If you have, like me, a whole bunch of socks that don't fit, and nobody wants your socks, I'm gonna cut a ton of them into strips, right? Take sleeves from flannels that I've turned into just like spring, fall, keep the core warm type stuff. Sew up one end of the sleeve and then just stuff it with those. Everything's been washed. Stuff it with those shredded socks, right? You got a little arm pillow, Make 5 of them. Make 6 of them. Yeah, 5. I guess you'd have a shirt with one sleeve. But make an even number of them and throw them in your car. And forget about it. Because someday, somebody's going to want to take a nap on a long road trip. You break down somewhere. I mean, who's going to complain about a bonus pillow, And all that waste didn't get thrown in the ocean. You didn't buy some cute pillow that you saw on Etsy, which is, fine. But we can make these things ourselves. And if it's just going to be your emergency car pillow, no one's going to see it. Nobody cares that you don't stitch well. You're only going to get good at it if you keep doing it. And so make all the stuff, fix all the stuff that no one's going to see if you're self-conscious, But there's just so much textile and fabric being thrown out. And we are simultaneously making synthetic fabrics, which takes its toll, as do organic fabrics, you gotta make the clothes last. And jeans are a perfect example. You get crazy paint stains on jeans. I don't know. They start to kind of look cool, right? Like, these are a mess, but I had a hole here. I sewed a little bumblebee on it. um, we gotta just think about all this stuff that we're just disposing of. Um, Try to get yourself to a place where you're never throwing out an article of clothing. If for some reason you are, take off every button. Put them in a jar. It takes a long time to fill a jar with buttons, so it's not going to get in your way. But it will come in handy. Um, because then, as you get a little bit better at stitching, you might decide that you want to make something bigger. Maybe a quilt. Um, One of those rugs you see, they're like, it's like rope rag rugs. That's all just t-shirts. You know, you got a bunch of t-shirts laying around nobody wants. Put them in the wash. Cut them up into strips. This is aside for the needle part and maybe some scissors, but it could be a fun thing to do with the kids. A neat thing to teach them young. Um, because it's something I learned very young. Um, from Boy Scouts, or Cub Scouts probably. But I don't remember a time when I didn't have a needle and thread, you know. Um, Another interesting thing is that the thread, as a kid, you're playing with it and it's a big tangled mess. But noticing that when you twist it, it comes apart, like rope or string, anything like that. Understanding that, because I was playing with thread long before I was playing with rock climbing rope or anything like that, because, I'm 7, 8 years old, trying to stitch my own badges on or something. I had my mother eventually do it, but you gotta try. And seeing that thread come apart in that spiral gave me an understanding of rope, of, how rope is made, the coiling and then the coil. I learned that from sewing before I ever had to tie a one-handed bowline or a square knot or anything. So intellectually, I went into it with an advantage because I was sewing my badges on. I learned how to splice rope really late in life. I don't know why I never tried to do it before, but I guess most of the rope I was using in life earlier was all rock climbing rope. So it's a different type of rope. It's the tube rope, nylon. But then fishing, all of a sudden, you're using that old school rope, the wrapped up rope, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember my dad doing this once. Or I have a memory of him splicing something and then being like just puzzled by what was happening. And so then I end up having this job working on a boat out of nowhere. I had no experience. But I learned how to splice. This isn't the best one, but, make 2 pieces of rope, one. That's strong as heck. And it's better than a knot, right? Because this could go through a pulley, things like that. You can tie a knot, preferably no, but you could use it in a knot, The reason I was able to just figure this out, I threw this thimble in here. This rope has a use to lift up my kayak, but I was only able to learn how to splice really quickly on a boat that's rocking back and forth on the way back in, and I was just back there on my own doing it. Just one day, it didn't take the whole day, maybe it was an hour or 2 hours or something. But it was because I understood and had screwed up things of thread so many times when it comes undone. When I started working with this, trying to figure out how to splice, that came to my memory, you know. So learn how to fix your clothes. If you're a guy, uh, it's stupid to think that that's not masculine. I don't know. Like I said, Alexander the Great knew how to do it. Probably, nobody's people in history are bringing their moms to war. They knew how to take care of themselves. So, um, and if I wasn't stitching things on my Cub Scout shirt, I wouldn't have been able to learn how to splice pretty fast on a moving boat on the way home after a 12-hour day. It all connects. It's all just learning new skills. And with this skill, we can help keep the oceans healthier because we're dumping a lot of fabric out there, a lot of textile. Um, Something like a curtain, that could be so many things. I mean, you know. But try to give your clothes away. Try to donate them if they can't be donated for some reason. And your friend just needs some, donate them, give them to friends. Um, Fix what you can. But for stuff that's just a lost cause, like I said, wash it and then just cut it up. And then you have this pillow filling for days, you know? Um, and then you can tackle making a pillowcase, which is probably the simplest thing. Just use a t-shirt, sew them. You're just making a bag, you know? You might stumble onto some kind of craft that you can turn into something. What I'd like to see is some kind of local donation, like a fabric donation, right? And that would ultimately go to a facility that sort of does what I'm talking about. I don't know. This idea is coming to me as I'm speaking, but uh, that's something to think about. And if you're smarter than me and more organized, which is a very good chance, figure that out for me, and then I can see it in the world. Uh, Another little thing I'd like to, I guess, plug um, is another podcast that I really like is, and it seems silly, it's called Doughboys, and it's these two guys that rate um, chain restaurants, any chain restaurant, Wendy's, uh, Hardee's, Chipotle, on any scale, Cheesecake Factory. Um, one of the one of the guys, Mike Mitchell, is from he's from Boston. The other guy, Nick Weiger, is from L.A. It's really funny. They're both comedians, both really gifted, talented people, writers, and just friendly. And the podcast it can get a little gross. It's two guys, but if you're searching through, find a guest that you like. Maybe you're like, oh, I really like Lauren Lapkus, or I really like Art Marine or something. Listen to that one because you're familiar with that person. It's a hilarious show. It's just a lot of fun. It's called Doughboys. So yeah, check it out. It's a lot of fun. All right, guys. See you later.